Hello and welcome to another edition of Mailbag. What is Mailbag? Well, Mailbag is a feature of the channel where you guys leave lots of comments on the channel and I attempt to answer those comments, or if I can't answer those comments, I throw it out to you guys who have more knowledge on some of this stuff than I do. So let's get into the first mailbag of this session. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. Next comment or question comes from Wahi. Hopefully I've got that right. And this is in response to the Roland JX-3P restoration part 2. How do you actually get inside the synthesizer? A video I did in April 2022. Good God. Wahi writes great stuff. Swap out the RAM for NVRAM replacement, and so you no longer need to actually use the battery. Which I think is a very interesting concept. I'll be the first to admit that I'm not an electronics engineer. You know, I do this stuff because I kind of understand what I'm doing. But when you get into the deep electronics of why something should be working like that, that's really not my forte. I know what I know and I know when to stop, is what I've always said. But I have been giving this comment some thought, and I thought I'd undertake a little research as well. Now, my understanding, and I prepared to be shot, or this video to have lots of holes shot in it by other people, but my understanding from the little research I have done is that swapping volatile RAM for non-volatile RAM is, in many cases, not a straightforward thing. There has to be some adjustments to the electronics to make the latter compatible with the former, is how I understand it. So it's not just a case of desoldering the old RAM chips and putting new RAM chips in. You actually have to make some circuitry changes to make it work. Now, given this, I suspect this is why a lot of synth owners have not gone down this route, because making changes to the electronic circuitry of your synthesizer is a much bigger task than just swapping the battery every 5 years or so. So, it's kind of horses for courses. Why would you do it? That's kind of the way I look at it anyway. And as I said, I'm not an electronics engineer. I wouldn't probably have the skill set to redesign the circuitry to actually put non-volatile RAM into the system. And maybe there's someone out there that wants to put me straight. And to be honest, feel free to do so, because, as I said, I'm not an electronics engineer. But to me, this sounds like a sledgehammer to crack a nut, if you ask me, because as long as you can get to the battery, and admittedly on the JX-3P, it's not the easiest thing, and it's not the nicest battery either. It's not a coin cell battery. It is actually a little sort of NVIDIA. It's a little cell battery, but it's, I suppose you could say it's a coin cell battery, but it's not the traditional CR3032. And you have to solder the damn thing into place, which is, the way they did it back then, I suppose. This question comes from Mitch Bigheart, and this is a response to the Korg Nautilus 80 Grey Moog Shut Up Shop SMR I did in July 2024. And Mitch writes, "Hi. They could put a Korg Nautilus AT, a new engine called Korg Collection. That would be really nice." So that's installing a new engine on the Nautilus to actually run VSTs. And I actually think this is actually quite a nice idea. But sadly, it's something I don't think we're going to see on the Nautilus in its current incarnation. And the reason for that is, while the Nautilus is a software-driven synthesizer, I'm not sure that the 32-bit architecture that is actually on or that is running on that synthesizer actually has enough oomph and horsepower to actually run a VST engine. But of course I'm open to challenge on that. The current operating system on the Nautilus, the Kronos and the Oasis before it is all based on this Linux kernel, which is a real-time kernel. And it's extremely functional for the keyboard. But really it hasn't changed in the 20 years or so that we've been running the Oasis, Kronos and Nautilus. So it kind of needs a bit of an update, and it's a 32-bit kernel, not a 64-bit kernel. And I think, you know, on both my Kronos and Oasis, it does a sterling job. I really have no complaints how functional the 32-bit environment is, but running modelled engines, as we've seen on PCs, really needs a little bit more oomph. And you can use some functions on the PC VST version, and it really spikes the processor and sends the whole thing into complete meltdown. The issue with 32-bit environments is not necessarily the processor. And again, the processor on the Kronos and the Nautilus are not spectacularly powerful. You know, when you consider, you know, when you used to have desktop PCs, it used to be, it's a so-and-so and it's running at X gigs of power and it's got multiple threads. That's not the case on the Kronos, but the way the Kronos and the kernel work with the operating system makes it actually work. The issue really with the platform and running a 32-bit architecture is you can only really use about 3.5 gigs of RAM. Even though you can install 4, you only got about 3.5 gigs of usable RAM. Whereas a true 64-bit environment could support 18, I think I've written this down right, 18 million terabytes of RAM because of the way the architecture works. But most infrastructure systems that are on 64-bit now are looking at 128 gigs, maybe 256 gigs. Either way, that's a stepped improvement from 4 gig. Now, the other thing about it is both the Nautilus and, I'm not sure about the Oasis, but both the Nautilus and the Kronos, the boards are 64-bit capable. It's the operating system that is not 64-bit capable, and whether that has any knock-on effects onto the boards that are attached and the software components that needed to run the other components, I don't know. But the actual board itself is capable of 64-bit, but it will require a complete re-architecture from the ground up. And I don't think we're going to see that on the Nautilus. We may see it on a new keyboard, but not the Nautilus.